Hey everyone, it's Lars again. Today I want to share my tips for beginners who are just starting their Overwatch journey. Whether you're new to first-person shooters or a seasoned veteran that's just new to the game, these tips will help you get up to speed and start turning the tables in your matches. Maybe go up a rank or two, unless you're a quick play warrior, which is also okay because, we don't judge. Finishing the initial, frankly outdated Soldier 76 tutorial with Athena, Overwatch has three mainstay modes of which its core identity is focused on. You have 5v5 and 6v6, which are exactly as advertised. A group of 5 or 6 players on either side, respectively depending on which queue you select, will queue together and play in a lobby to decide the victor. Games are balanced around respective rank or time played on the game if you don't have a rank, and are usually pretty quick at 10 to 15 minutes long, and sometimes as low as 5 to 6 minutes depending on the map type. And then there's Stadium, which is essentially a Deadlock clone, instead focusing on gold economy and building items. And the objective of Overwatch depends on, well, the objective. Similar to TF2, you have the conventional payload style maps in Payload and Hybrid. Payload has you just pushing an arbitrary objective, be it explosives, a cargo truck, a dormant robot, and getting it to the endpoint being the last spawn room of the enemy team. Typically on those maps, you go through 3 subsections, of which the community generally refers to as first, second, and third points respectively. For example, Dorado first point looks like this, second point like this, and the final section of the map, third point. You'll know you've passed the objective once that cart freezes at the end of the given point, and a number is tallied on your score, 1, 2, or 3, depending on where you are in the current game state. This scoreboard is only for competitive game modes, since in competitive both teams get to attack and defend pushing the objective, whereas in quick play you can only go one round, attacking or defending, and then the game ends. There is also Control, which is your standard King of the Hill style game mode, where there is a central encompassing objective marked in white, or red or blue if either side is currently contesting it, for teams to fight for. Capture the point, then hold it for as long as you can, with the eventual goal of getting to 100% capture progress before the enemy team does. Hybrid maps incorporate a mix of both. You'll be fighting for the control point on the first point, but then it swaps to a payload for the second and third sections of the map. Maps of this type include Eichenwald, Blizzard World, and King's Row. If you're a returning Overwatch player that has not played Overwatch 2, or hasn't played since map types were released, there are new map types in the game introduced recently in Flashpoint, Push, and Clash. Clash has largely been phased out of the game because we didn't like it that much, at least for competitive. But Flashpoint and Push are generally well received, so we'll go over them. Flashpoint maps include Suravasa and New Junk City, and involve you fighting over an individual control point similar to Koth. However, unlike Koth, you aren't fighting over a singular objective on the map you're currently on, but rather it flips between a multitude of different objectives within the same map. Just the map is super big and has a bunch of sub-areas for you to go to in order to contest the next objective. Whereas conventional control only lasts a maximum of 3 rounds, or is best of 3, Flashpoint is best of 5, or first to 3 control captures. This means a game can go all the way to 5 points instead of 3. However, it's offset by the control points themselves, requiring an overall faster capture progress than the typical control maps. So matches feel fast-paced and fun, without much downtime, especially when you consider the condensed nature of the points by design. It's very hectic, and there's almost always a fight going on outside of rotating between the points, and sometimes a fight will even break out then. As for Push, this map type has you contesting a robot body that moves as you hover over it without the enemy teams contesting. You kill the enemy team to clear the area, then you are free to move the bot and push it a couple of in-game meters. Then you either fight again or back off to recollect yourself and regain steam, and rinse repeat until one team has more meters pushed than the other. It's actually pretty simple. In all of these modes, you are still actively on the objective, but losing the game, or at a tie or deficit, at 0 on the clock, the game will trigger the overtime feature. You'll know it's overtime if the game doesn't end once the in-game clock strikes 0, and the menus don't override the game saying the round was over. The word overtime and a timer will be displayed on the top of your screen as well as it's happening. Overtime allows you to extend the duration of a match, so long as you're actively on top of the objective. Meaning even in a dire last fight situation where if you guys lose, you lose the game, you can still win as long as you chain enough fight wins sequentially in a row and push the objective to the end, or finish its capture progress. Every time you run off the point, there will be a few seconds where you're allowed to do that before the round automatically ends. You're going to hear a lot of players saying, C9, C9, Charlie Niner, when your team loses a game because of this. Since a pro team back in the old days of Overwatch walked off of the point to go chase kills and set up for the next fight, not realizing that somebody needed to be on the point to keep the objective alive, or rather they just forgot. That team was Cloud9, and so the meme began.
Even if they lose this one, not out of it yet. Mendo coming from behind with the tag visor. They're going to use the sound barrier as well. Arhan's going to get taken out. Can't really do much about that. Adam in trouble. Mendo trying to run away.
Nobody's on the point!
Are you kidding me? Again? What?
Oh,
that
man.
is 2 rounds in a row that Cloud9 could have easily contested that and no one was on the point.
So don't be that guy. If you don't genuinely have a good reason for leaving the point in an OT situation, like say, grabbing a health pack because you're 1 HP, then pushing back to the cart to regain the progress, overtime is a crucial game state you'll learn in time not to underestimate. I'll also add that the feature can't be abused as much, since the overtime timer gets less and less lenient the more you touch and retouch. So if you leave the cart, the timer gets more strict, up to a point where after enough retouches, if you so much breathe in a vicinity that is not directly on the cart, the game will end, so you need to be careful the more you touch. Start by trying different heroes to find the ones you feel most comfortable with. Each one brings something unique to the table, and understanding their abilities is crucial for team synergy. My advice is to look at the hero select screen in the game or in its menus, and find that one hero that speaks to you on a design level, especially if you're really new to the game. If Genji calls out your name, then go ahead. Maybe Reinhardt looked really cool in the cinematic you watched on YouTube while researching the game in your free time. Don't worry about the preconceived notions about heroes like how easy or hard they are to pick up. Sure, there may be more optimal selections for you in terms of maximizing improvement and learning the game as efficiently as possible, but you're new, and you don't really know what you're doing yet. It's important to gain something that I call exposure. Exposure is a lot of different things within the context of the game. It could be your friends teaching you all the ins and outs of the game, from mechanics to positioning to which heroes you're going to despise the most and why those heroes are named Sombra, and so on. And when starting out, just dip your toes in the pool and see what you like. If the water's too cold, then you swap to a hero that may be more comfortable for you and your playstyle. And that's another thing you're going to have to consider. Playstyles and roles. If you prefer the more in-your-face playstyle where you make as much space for your team as possible and soak up attention, tank was going to be the role for you. Tanks have adept playmaking potential, high health to engage at your own pace, versatility in playstyle, they can aggress or defend, can play from range or engage, a tendency to be an in-game leader and communicate with the team, a good balance between personal agency and difficulty in expression, and some mechanics, though less than DPS, which is excellent for beginners. If you're feeling miserable playing tank, trust me, I've been there, it's not for everyone. Remember that Overwatch is a shooter game at its core, so you still have hope. For the more traditional expression of that point, you have the DPS role. DPS have more personal agency in playmaking, flashiness in their abilities and kit, more individual with less prominence on making callouts as opposed to tank, but more mechanical skill and overall skill of the game required to compensate for that. The truly dedicated will learn regardless, and it's one of the most fun roles with the widest selection of heroes and playstyle variants. For tanks, I highly recommend starting off with Ryan or Winston. Both of them are going to teach you how to play your life, which is basically just surviving without feeding, despite your large HP pool, and understand the ebb and flow of Overwatch in a way that still makes you feel like a superhero when you pull off the occasional big shatter or nano primal. For players looking for less of a cookie cutter tank experience, I recommend Doomfist and Wrecking Ball. These heroes aren't for the faint of heart, especially in the case of Ball, but the reward for learning either of them is large, and the skill ceiling for both is even bigger. In terms of how unique a character can get in this game, these two are the pinnacle of that. So if you don't really care about winning or losing, and just want to have fun in the tank role, then those two are my suggestion for you. My recommendations for learning DPS are Cassidy and Soldier 76, for those with a traditional shooter background, as well as Mei, Sojourn, and Pharah, for being versatile, strong heroes that will bode well in the majority of situations, with varying degrees of expression and difficulty. In Overwatch, there are two types of DPS: hit scan DPS and projectile flex DPS. Whenever someone refers to a character as hit scan or projectile, this is the classification that they're referring to. Hit scans have a weapon with instant travel time, meaning the second you click on something, it registers the damage straight away. However, for projectile characters, the weapons on those heroes have some sort of charge time, duration, effect, or travel time that sets them apart. Genji's shurikens or Hanzo's bow need to be led. Echo has a tri-shot projectile out of her finger, and Venture has that weird drill thing, and so on. These heroes typically have better overall kits and abilities to compensate for the lack of effective range damage like the hit scans have, though some strike a nice balance between the two regardless of that fact. For players looking for the more traditional DPS experience, I recommend the hit scan heroes, your Widows, your Cassidys, etc. For the most execution savvy, I recommend Genji, Tracer, or Echo. And for someone who wants something totally out there, maybe Mei or Venture. However, if you're looking for a more supportive role, maybe you've played the mage or backline hero in a MMO game or RPG, then you have the support role for that. Supports have solid mix between damage and healing capability. They're some of the strongest heroes with the strongest abilities in the game, have a lot of individual and team agency. Contrary to popular belief, there's a lot of variance in playstyle as well. And there's a lot of different variants in DPS supports, supports, and tanky supports, and it really just depends on you. There's the option for easier heroes, or ones that require more execution as well. For the more conventional support playstyles, I recommend Ana, Kiriko, and Mercy. And Ana will teach you a good balance between damage-based play and high healing output, while also forcing you to position well, since she doesn't have an escape or survivability cooldown to bail her out, and is low mobility. However, she's a really strong hero that rewards your skill. So in my eyes, her balance of being strong, while also not being as forgiving, makes her perfect to learn the game from and its mechanics with. Plus, having a solid Ana in your rotation is always good for competitive play, if you're looking for that. Kiri is much of the same in terms of being a viable competitive pick, except unlike Ana, she's a jack of all trades and master of some character that excels in many aspects, but still allows you to play that more conventional support hero role. If you kinda just want to turn your brain off and heal, and learn the game without much stress, you can play her and do decently well, though she has the ability to be taken to the next step from an aggressive standpoint as a flanker style backline support alongside one of your DPS or tanks when diving. Without any offensive utility outside of damage boost, Mercy is going to teach you how to play without resources. You're going to learn to master cover usage, movement, and positioning, basically by force. Otherwise you're just going to die a lot. Just don't res out in the open, or do and find out the hard way. Overwatch is a team game, not a solitary endeavor. Use team chat or pings to let teammates know where enemies are, when abilities are up, or when you're ready to make a big push. Communication is key, otherwise everyone's going to have to read your mind when you want to make a play. For example, if you have anti-nade on Ana, which is her E, a thrown projectile that denies the enemy team access to healing after splashing it on them, you can call for your more aggressive or mobile teammates like Genji or Winston to follow up on the play. This is called a nade dive, or a hit, and it's a fundamental strength players will be incorporating a lot to swing momentum in their favor in any given game. Part of what makes Overwatch fun is the amount of hero combos you can execute within the game, so feel free to get creative with different strategies and start thinking outside of the box. Who knows? You may find a game plan or hero synergy people haven't really thought of or really explored yet, so make sure you keep on grinding. I'd rather you be an Obi-Wan than an Anakin. Don't play low ground the entire match if you don't have to. High ground in Overwatch is really oppressive, and there are a lot of maps you can abuse that fact. High ground is much harder for the enemy to shoot at you than it is for you to shoot at them, and you can duck further into it to avoid enemy LOS, or line of sight, and they won't be able to shoot at you anymore unless they go up there themselves, with high mobility heroes, which in of itself is a risk. It's a lot harder to dive a moving on a Brigitte stack on high ground, on maps like Dorado or Numbani, than if you were to be more stationary on the low ground on those very same maps. The good old who, what, when, where, and why. I'm sure you heard a lot of that in school. Learn who to go to in any given situation by studying pro players and reviewing games. Using coaching resources like myself, who people seem to forget I provide, you can contact me using the Discord link below to join my server. Shameless plug, but I don't give a fuck. Learn when you should go on a flank versus when you should stay with your team. Too much of one or the other can lead to a predictable playstyle when we want flexibility. And make sure you understand why it is you do the things that you do in game. Why do I take cover here? Why do I dive this target? Why do I shoot this specific person at a specific time? Why do I only know how to play Moira and Lifeweaver at a suboptimal level? All this will come in time, but it's important you think as a player to really improve at the rate that you want. But if you don't care, the time that you spent learning the game is an experimentation phase for you, so don't worry if it's not overnight. And remember that learning the game, and by proxy improvement, occurs in different people differently and to varying degrees of success or speed. You won't go to space, so remember to enjoy the process. For context, before hitting GM2 in Season 4 of Overwatch 2, I was a Rhine OTP for my first 100 hours of Overwatch 1. Basically a pinning Pedro that you would find in any given ranked game, in Diamond or Plat. You'll be surprised at where you'll end up if you dedicate enough time to the game, and will look back on your beginning portion of initially starting off the game fondly. Watching the game greatly improves your understanding of it so long as you're looking for the right things. But how do we know what to look for or where to find it? Well, I highly recommend the wide array of educational resources you can find for Overwatch on YouTube. For more general coaching, Coach Spilo is your guy. For Femboy Twink coaching, Kadra's your guy. But in all seriousness, he strikes a good balance between general gameplay knowledge and covering pro-level Overwatch. Plus he does coaching as well. For meta-specific strategies, you have Coach OC or Coach Whistle. Or maybe pro coaches like Unter, Commander X, and Capitology, who all do a good job respectively at teaching you how to play the game at pro level, and the nuances that go on in each match, of which you can then apply to your ranked games to ascend the ladder and become that level of play. Aside from that, you don't really have to worry about being super optimal about learning. Watch good players of your respective hero and draw inspiration from them. Just make sure that player in question isn't derpy,